Hey guys, Rafe here from Evolve Move Play. So today I want to introduce you to an example of what we call the rod, the rock, and the rope practice. So there's many ways that we can do this, and this isn't so much an instructional as it's a kind of example for you, but we'll talk about specific things that we're doing along the way. What I want to do is show you how I'm practicing, because I think that this is a practice that a lot of people could benefit from, to add something playful, to add some regular movement into the practice, and to get them playing with a variety of objects and seeing what they offer. Fundamentally, every culture in the world plays with ropes, with sticks or rods, and with balls or rocks. When I was growing up, it was apples, right? Some kind of round object is an amazing thing to play with, and it's played with in every culture in the world. We can juggle with it, we can throw with it, and they act in such a way that it makes it really easy to play with them in a variety of ways. So these are the fundamental toys that you find everywhere in the world. Everything's based off of this, and there's so many flow practices that we can engage with as soon as we have these. And there's really interesting ways in which they interconnect and ways that we can use them to build up our general athleticism. And so if you think about the ways that a human body interacts with the world, sometimes we're just focused on ourselves, right? Oh, how does it feel to move my shoulders? Sometimes we're focused on how we move through the world, running, jumping, climbing. Sometimes we're focused on how we move with other people. And then the other piece is how can we manipulate tools? And that's what we want to play with today. And this is what I'm doing in my backyard almost every day. Okay guys, so the first toy that we're going to look at is the rope. This is a Golden Teacher rope from Way of the Rope by Tim Sheaf, who thank you for sending that to me. The rope practice is something I've only actually picked up really in the last few months. It was originally popularized by David Weck with his RMT method, and I've found it really interesting. I often am kind of like skeptical of whatever the latest trend is in the industry, and this has gotten really popular, and I didn't do it for a long time, but I started doing it this summer because I was sick actually, and I just needed something to do to try and get me moving, and it became a really nice way to get me moving that was really low impact on my nervous system. And so I could just do this, and I started doing it as a daily movement snack. Now, the way that I learned this was I would watch tutorials, and I would only watch the part where they demonstrated the pattern, and I would just try to do it myself. And so occasionally that meant, I like smacked myself in the head, but it's okay. I found it was not that bad. And I encourage you to watch this, and I'll give you some basic ideas, but I don't think that it's actually necessary to go super fine detailed on the patterns. I want to show you guys the overall principles of what's happening with the rope and the way that I play with it. So one of the cool things about it is that you can do a lot of it, and fundamentally as you move the rope, it kind of invites you to start shifting from foot to foot, and it's creating these rotational movements and these loading where we're shifting from one side of the spine to the other. David Weck talks about this as basically building the coiling mechanism of the spinal engine. And we'll see, I don't know how much that impacts all these other things, but it feels good, and it feels like it's rich and helping me, and actually was helping me a lot with my back pain, which has largely gone away now. So as we're playing with the rope, just notice how you can move the rope around. I would start with one hand and just start playing with it. So one way to move the rope around is just to swing it in front of you. And this basic pattern they call the propeller swing. So if we take that propeller swing and we bring it to the side, bring it to the other side, right? And we start varying it, now we've really got most of what we're doing. So we can do the propeller swing here. Now, in relationship to the rope, is the rope coming up towards me or around? So if I'm going this way, this would be an overhand pattern. If I'm on this way, it's an underhand pattern. So you want to play with underhand and overhand, shifting between them. Now, to start learning to pass the rope behind us, we just do it with the rope in one hand. So I'm just passing it behind me. And I can do the same thing on the other side. So this is an overhand pattern now because the rope continued. Over here, it's the underhand pattern. So notice how my hand goes under to move that rope around, and notice how on this side, the hand goes over. So now I can open up and start doing the same stuff with two hands. So I can do my propeller swing, do my propeller swing the other way. I can take the rope around behind me, It's basic figure 4 or figure 8s. Boom. Play with multiple swings on one side. And now when I want to take the rope behind me, boom. Basically, the rope is going to be going that way, swinging that way. And then when I take it behind me, it swings that way. It still drags that way. And I move my body to allow it to keep going. And it's this beautiful shift of my weight from foot to foot with this rotation of my torso that feels very developmental from many different athletic things. So if I take this pattern and I shift it now, so I'm here. The difference between this pattern they call the dragon roll, the difference between this pattern and the next pattern, which they call the whoop. So I made a mistake. This would be the overhand sneak. So watch how my hand dives behind. So because I'm here, now, if I come over here, so now I'm in the position to do an underhand sneak. So watch the backhand and see how it goes behind my back. Watch the backhand, see how it goes behind my back. And then I can do it on both sides. If I just turned my body to face the other way, it would become an overhand, but I'm going to switch it. I'm going to give the overhand here, and so now you can see the overhand with the switch, overhand with the switch, overhand with the switch. So for me, the key realization to master all those patterns is to realize the rope is really mostly doing the same thing, whether I'm doing a dragon roll, or an underhand sneak, or an overhand sneak. It's just the orientation of my body that's changing. So now, once I have this, I can play with bringing it out to the figure 4, I can double it on one side. What I've been really enjoying recently is wrapping and unwrapping my arms, because when I wrap on one side and switch to the other side, it unwraps it. And I have this nice flow there, and then it can get to here. And of course, when I'm doing these, I can also start jump roping. And that is some of how I'm enjoying playing with this tool, the rope. I'm going to show you some of the ways that connects to the other tools that we're going to be playing with. Okay guys, so the next tool that I want to play with and show you guys how I work with is the mace. So this is a 10-pound mace. I suggest starting with a lighter mace, like a 5-pound mace. There's a temptation to go heavy and think of this as like, oh, it's weights. We're going to do weight training with it. But I think really it's better to think of it as a tool to play with that has some resistance to it. And you create resistance by using the lever arm and the speed to create different kinds of forces moving through your body. I like to play with the mace often directly after playing with the rope because both of them involve a lot of rotational and circular movement. I love a barbell, I love a kettlebell, I love dumbbells for their purpose, but a lot of times we're using these sagittal plane movements without rotational components or with minimized rotational components by being fixed to a barbell to create neural drive and muscular hypertrophy, and that's great. But when we're looking for transfer to athletic movements, sometimes we're not spending enough time exposing these rotational capacities. So the rope does that, but when I start picking up the mace, I'm getting a very similar thing about weight shifting from side to side, coiling my body and rotating through different patterns. So the basic pattern, again, I'm going to work on taking the mace in front of me, rotation. So notice, we're rotating. We're making circles with the mace, just like we're making circles with the rope. Now the question is, how would I take this mace behind my back? So, of course, be careful first time you do this. But a really simple way to do it is bring it up and then reach around behind the back. You can rest it on your shoulder and bring it out. And notice now the pattern of shifting on my feet and the pattern of shifting with my torso is really fundamentally similar when I'm doing this, boom, to when I'm doing this. Okay. The ability to move the implement from in front of my body to behind my body involves this fundamental ability to rotate, to have timing, and to shift my weight from foot to foot. And those are really beautiful and powerful athletic attributes. I like to think about this as really exposing and playing with the throwing pattern in particular. So if I swing that here, and I bring it behind my back, right here, now I'm taking my shoulder back there, and I'm casting this out. Whew. And this feels amazing for my shoulder, amazing for building that external rotation capacity, rotational strength. And I like feeling that connection between the way I'm working with the rope and the way I'm working with this mace. So now if I can do it this way, the question is, can I invert it? So here it is. And all of this feels really, really rich and nourishing to finding all these little corners of my shoulder. The way I like to think about it is like, it's the motor intelligence. Feeling the timing, the rhythm, the coordination, and getting exposure of all those tissues rotating in and around and connecting into my shoulder trains it in a way that feels really healthy for me and really rich, in addition to the stuff I'm doing with all the pulling work that I do as a parkour athlete, pull-ups, climb-ups, tree climbing, etc. So I'll play with those two basic patterns. That's the main work that I do. There are many things that you can do, of course, as far as working with flowing into positions, boom, boom, footwork. Boom. This is a toy for me. The important thing is just having some safe basics for how you move the mace around and then being able to explore from there. Okay guys, the next tool is the rock or the ball or the apple, the piece of fruit. What occurs to me as I'm thinking about this is how important the capacity to grasp is for human beings, to catch things. How rewarding is it when something falls in your kitchen and you catch it, you're like, ah, I got it, right? I'm quick, my hands work. Practicing things that give you that hand-eye coordination is such a valuable thing to add to your practice. If we go back in primate evolution, really like 60 million years ago, one of the things that separates us from other mammals is instead of catching our food with our mouths, like a dog will bite an animal to bring it down, we were catching insects out of the air with our hands. So humans have this incredible wiring around catching things with our hands. And so some kind of practice that develops that is so important, and it has so much transferability for any athletic task. Like for me as a parkour athlete, I need to feel really confident that when I'm flying through the air, I'm gonna catch the things that my hands are aimed at. So having some kind of practice that involves this is super great. So you can juggle tennis balls, you can play catch and throw games, any number of things. What I'm personally enjoying right now is these 2 6-pound medicine balls and juggling them together. These balls are big enough, it's hard for me to juggle more, and I only have 2 of them. I have also worked with 6 and 8 pound balls that are smaller, that are graspable, where I can do a 3-ball cascade, and that's so much fun, super interesting. But I really like this particular thing. This has been a big playful part of my training recently. Boom. So I'm going to try to keep both up in the air. Whew. Woo. Woo. So what I love about this is it's only 6 pounds, but your biceps will really feel it because the weight is it's being accelerated down by gravity. Every time you catch it, it's stretching your bicep out. So the force you're experiencing is actually much higher. So a really intense upper body workout. It's also beautiful. It's metabolic, as you can tell. My heart rate is elevated. And catching the ball is a little bit of impact training. It's actually toughening up the tissues of your arms and your chest as you catch the ball. So this is something that I'm absolutely loving. It's a little bit more of an advanced practice if you don't have some basic juggling experience, but you know, doesn't hurt to give it a try and see what you can do. But just grabbing a ball like this and playing catch, you know, with yourself, catching with one hand, catching different positions. Notice, just playing with this, I noticed this. Think about the pattern with the rope and the pattern with the mace. If I circle it and catch it on the other side like that, whoa. So, tons of fun to be had with just a couple 6-pound medicine balls. Have a couple laying around in your backyard, along with some tennis balls and lacrosse balls and all sorts of other fun toys, and you can just add some basic ball games to your daily routine, and it's gonna make you feel a lot more alive, a lot more playful, and it's gonna also be a huge contributor to your fitness and general movement competency. Okay, so the next expression of the ball is gonna be the basic kettlebell. Everybody's familiar with the kettlebell at this point. But once again, essentially, it's kind of a rock with a handle on it. And we're going to be able to play with it in various ways because of the fact that we can swing it in different ways with the handle. Now, we practice a lot doing basic swinging patterns as kind of our basic daily warm-up, along with shaking. And we can take a really light kettlebell and have a lot of variety of swings. Now we can do some variety with a heavier kettlebell too, but most people are gonna focus on kind of progressing the heaviness of the kettlebell, but it's really nice to use the kettlebell sort of as an athletic implement that lets us explore a lot of movement patterns. So again, athletically, I spend a lot more time on one leg or in a split stance than I spend with my feet fixed together doing a classic sort of kettlebell swing. So I like to play with swinging the kettlebell, not just here, but here and here and here, and moving it and swing it side to side. And from those swings, we can work on various ways of catching the kettlebell. Bop. I can juggle it. Play with swinging it up all the way. Obviously, we can press the kettlebell. Now with this light kettlebell, I can almost punch it out. And for me, just a tool like this, I think it's an 8-pound kettlebell, becomes a really interesting way to play with basic athletic movements of swinging the body, of shifting my stance, of dropping down, coming up, of exploding out, thrusting that kettlebell out. Whew, like that. Feels so good and so athletic. So by taking a tool like this and adding it to basic swinging pattern and footwork and throwing and swinging my arms, I'm loading and I'm giving myself the chance. So the implement doesn't weigh very much. It's 8 pounds, right? But if I throw it out and rip it down and I'm adding my force to it, now I can get my hip getting stretched out and pressed in through that movement at a rate that I'm controlling, but that it's much more than just the force of this, right? If I just slowly go over here, it's very easy. But if I throw it down and come out, now I'm getting a big stretch response, and I'm able to use this as really an athletic amplifier, and I can explore being in a split stance, being on one leg, being up on my toe on the back leg. I can be twisted. I can have the bell moving here and exploding out of it. I can jump and switch. And all of this is building those fundamental patterns that I express athletically in any number of different, like team sport, parkour, combat sport applications. So super fun to just play with a kettlebell like this. So last, I've just got a 48-pound kettlebell here, 24 kilos is a standard kettlebell. I'm not gonna do as much super athletic stuff with this. I could juggle, there's some classic kettlebell juggling stuff that I got into years and years ago when I was practicing CrossFit. Boom. And there's various ways to play with this. The light stuff that I showed you, I will do that often 3 or 4 times a day and breaks and just like movement snacks. I'll do it with some handstands, a few pull-ups. And then maybe once a day, a few times a week, I'll just grab the kettlebell and I'm just gonna do basic stuff. It's really, there's nothing sexy about this particular thing. It's basic stuff. You've seen it from any number of people. You're gonna pick the kettlebell up, you're gonna swing it, boom, boom. Do a good amount that you're gonna feel the next day. Gonna get your heart rate up, or maybe boom. We'll do some thrusters with the kettlebell. Boom. We can do some goblet squats. We can do Hindu squats. I don't really have a super prescribed program at this stage for myself. I'm just feeling and intuiting kind of the type of demand that feels good to my body based on what I've done with all my other practices, how much impact my legs have taken, what's sore. Is it my knees, is it my calves, is it my feet? That'll kind of set me on my trajectory, right? If I've irritated my knees a little bit, which, my knees are actually doing really great, but when you do a lot of heavy jumps, you might just feel a little bit of it. Then kettlebell swings are great because they're gonna get the hips going, get a lot of movement in without stressing the knees. If on the other hand, I haven't really loaded my legs in a traditional way, like some basic squats or some Hindu squats to get those quads really prepared for my next session, can be really, really rich. So I do play with a 48-pound kettlebell, traditional strength way you might see from a CrossFitter, might see from Strong First, but I do it as part of this overall playful rod, rock, and rope workout. And I'm trying to see the connections between all these things and how I craft myself as a more athletic person and have more fun with it as something I can just do in my backyard. And that's what I want to inspire you guys to go do, is get some toys and go play and feel fitter, more capable, and more able to take on the world.